Midnight, this wasn't how it was supposed to go.
The United States is flagging what it calls trade irritants in a new report, and it cites several measures here in Canada, including the federal government's Buy Canadian procurement policy and the decision to pull American alcohol off the shelves.
I don't buy anything American. I don't go to the States anymore.
For months, the strategy in Washington looked straightforward. Apply pressure, raise tariffs, wait for Canada to give in. But something unexpected began to surface in the data, quietly, gradually, and it wasn't Canada showing strain, it was the United States. The
Canadian provision was put in place because of the trade war with the U.S. And some companies point out it's only fair because the Americans have a similar rule on their side of the border.
At first, everything followed the familiar pattern. Then the numbers arrived, and that's where the story changed. U.S. exports to Canada fell by more than $13 billion. Imports from Canada dropped by nearly $30 billion. Suddenly, this wasn't political theater anymore. This was movement inside the economy, real, measurable, and impossible for decision-makers to ignore. But what most people missed was this: the response wasn't chaotic or emotional. It was deliberate, coordinated, persistent. Because this story doesn't actually begin with tariffs. It begins with an assumption that pressure would only flow one way, that Canada would absorb the impact quietly and adjust. That assumption proved wrong. Instead of reacting randomly, Canada aligned policy, incentives, and behavior. And that's when the pressure slowly started reversing. Not overnight, in layers. Consumers shifted habits, subtly but consistently. Checking labels, skipping American products, choosing domestic alternatives not out of obligation, but preference. And once behavior changes like that, it rarely snaps back.
When it comes to grocery shopping, if it's American, Scott Proudfoot isn't buying it.
It's about buying Canadian, but also, frankly, just not buying American.
At the same time, government policy reinforced the shift. Large contracts moved toward domestic suppliers. Reliance on foreign goods eased gradually, avoiding shock while applying steady pressure. Then came the most visible signal. American alcohol was removed from major provincial shelves. Not reduced, not restricted, removed. A billion-dollar market disrupted almost instantly. That's when U.S. businesses began to feel it. And this is where the situation turned serious. Because this isn't about one product or one decision. Multiple pressures hit at once. Exports fall. Contracts disappear. Consumer demand fades. Each effect compounds the next. When that happens, it stops being temporary. Tariffs can be negotiated. Policies can change. But behavior is different. Once supply chains adjust, they don't reset overnight. Once habits shift, they don't automatically return. What we're seeing isn't just disruption, it's structural change. And now that reality is appearing in official reports presented directly to decision-makers. This is no longer background noise. It's moving to the center. And the pressure isn't limited to governments. Manufacturers, exporters, tourism, service industries, all absorbing quieter losses. Because when economic pressure flows both ways, it doesn't just affect trade numbers. It reshapes the relationship itself. The balance shifts slowly until it doesn't. And that's the real story. Not what's visible on the surface, but what's changing underneath. Because once the data no longer matches the original plan, ignoring it stops being an option. And that shift is already in motion.